Joining me now, former Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland, and Rob O'Neill. He is the former Navy SEAL who killed Osama bin Laden. Rob, first to you, can we get those thousands of Americans out now? How would you do it?
Yeah, we can get them out now. We just need a lot of Marines and a lot of 82nd Airborne at the airfield and let the Taliban know. I'm just amazed we're telling the Taliban what we're doing and getting their permission. Tell them we're coming out and we're going to kill everyone with a gun. Have our people a hard point in place. It's not going to take one day. It would take a number of weeks. But every time we meet the Taliban face to face, we crush them. We need to do it again. We need strength, and it's time for this administration to admit, okay, we were wrong with the pullout, and now we're going to fix it. Because I'm a big believer. It doesn't matter how you got where you're going. You're just there now, and we're just here now, and we have people who really need us, and we need to use American might, our coalition might, and go get them.
KT, you hear what Rob is saying, but the White House is saying, oh, the road to the Kabul airport is blocked. The White House still does not know how many Americans are stranded. It's expected to be several thousands. Fears that they can't reach the Kabul airport in time. The U.S. Embassy saying there's going to be delays due to checkpoints. Get out there, get there on your own. But Rob is saying something entirely different to that. What do you say?
Look, Rob is right. It's inconceivable to me that a president of the United States is leaving American citizens behind in Afghanistan, knowing what fate awaits them. And he's doing it, why? Because he's trusting the word of the Taliban, or I guess he's taking his orders from the Taliban about getting the American military out of there at a certain point. You know, we have American citizens all over Afghanistan. They're not just in Kabul. They're not just working for the U.S. government. They're people who teach school to girls in parts of Afghanistan. We have 1 or 2 or 3 civilians who will be working on a farming project in another part of Afghanistan. These people are alone. They have no way of getting to Kabul airport. It's not like you get in your car and you drive from Washington to Boston. These are people who have no way of getting from one place to another, and even if they had a car to drive to Kabul airport, they would be stopped every mile or two because everybody in Afghanistan has an AK-47, and they're all going to be out on the roads looking for Americans, looking for bribes. My concern, and I think I'm getting it loud and clear from the administration, is they keep saying this, well, we're going to evacuate all Americans who want to leave. And their definition of who wants to leave is the people who get themselves to Kabul airport in time by August 31st. It's not going to happen. I think the administration is setting themselves up to say, well, the other guys didn't want to leave.
So this is going to be a Clinton moment. It depends on what the meaning of the word is. They're really going to go there? I mean, Rob, when you hear what KT is saying, and then you see what Trump's position was, his plan was, and NATO and the UN Security Council said yes to that plan, it's conditions-based, cut off ties with al-Qaeda. And when you have a plan, you account for Americans ahead of time. That's what Kash Patel is saying. Biden just dumped the plan, didn't have a plan. And now we have Democrat House Intelligence Chair Adam Schiff saying it's, quote, very unlikely evacuations will be done by August 31st, and they can't account for every American. Do you see what's going on, Rob?
Isn't it crazy they're already making excuses knowing they screwed up, but knowing they can fix it too? And we always knew on the ground eventually we're going to have to negotiate with the Taliban at some point because they're just there. They've been right across the border in Pakistan the entire time. They've been planning this the entire time. But we needed to give them conditions, and certainly don't let them surround the airport, nobody in. And they're giving us a timeline and an ultimatum, which is complete nonsense. These are not good people. They shouldn't be treated as a legitimate government, which we're doing, and we're doing everything they want because I'm convinced a lot of people in this administration at the Pentagon know that when we get everyone out of there, there won't be any more television in Afghanistan, no more internet in Afghanistan, no more social media. We'll just forget what's going on over there and not think about the people who are having their kids' heads cut off in front of their families.
Yeah, we're hearing, and also this, the UN Human Rights Commissioner, Michelle Bachelet, KT, is saying that there is a rise, the United Nations is saying this, a rise in street executions happening right now, including other various sexual assaults and more. Biden's approval rating plunging nearly 10 percentage points, an historic fall, KT, in just 1 week to 41%. New USA Today's Suffolk University polls show that. The majority say they disagree with how he's handling this. And so when you see that, and when you see the way that they're top-spinning this, when Republican Ben Sasse is saying, tell the Taliban we're getting everyone out as long as it takes, damn the deadline. Is that what you would have told them?
Yeah, and I'd probably also say, and you harm the head of one American, and we are going to come and get you and your family and your cousins and everybody else. You do not do this to Americans. I'm really worried that, though, what happens next. I think the price of this, the Biden presidency is finished. He will never be able to reclaim the competency of an American president. He's been seen to be what he is. He's incompetent, he's incoherent, he's uncaring. His presidency is finished. I just don't want America to be finished. I don't want this to be the inflection point where all the countries in the world, like the G7 who talked to President Biden today, where they say, well, you know, we're not going to follow America anymore. America won't even save its own people, much less us, and where our adversaries now take advantage of it. There's a cardinal rule of foreign policy that if your adversary is weak or distracted or in trouble of any sort, that's when you make your move. I think China makes its move on Taiwan within the next couple of months, knowing that they will get no response or no pushback from the Biden administration. And that will have a ramification that the United States will be living with for 100 years.
Got it. It's clear. You know, by the way, KT mentioned the G7 and also our U.S. allies and NATO are shocked and outraged at what's going on, Rob. Biden assured them in June, just 2 months ago, that it would be a stable withdrawal. That didn't happen. By the way, it was NATO that invoked Article 5 after 9/11, saying one member is attacked, we are all attacked. It's clear the press too, Rob, has had it with the dissembling and the prevarication. Watch Jake Sullivan, NSA. He's refusing to commit that Biden will secure Kabul airport until every American is out. And watch a CBS reporter ask the Pentagon spokesman, are you being deliberately vague on the number of Americans still stranded? Let's watch this.
Has the president decided whether he is going to need more time beyond August 31st to get all U.S. personnel and Afghan people out of the country?
As I said, the president believes we are making substantial progress.
The broader point I would make is that we have been able to take advantage of consular officers throughout this building and around the world.
Okay, but I'm not interested in the broader point. I'm just interested in the answer to the question. Are you still sending people there?
If it's just a matter of checking the number, can you do that and give it to us? Or if you're being deliberately vague, tell me why you're being deliberately vague.
I think I'm just going to leave it at several thousand right now.
That's what's so shocking, Rob. They don't know how many Americans are stranded there. They're saying, you know, you're on your own. Make your way to the airport. Take it, Rob. So what happens?
Yeah, I don't think they know exactly how many are there. I don't ever want them to project how many they think they're there exactly. But it sounds to me like they're being deliberately vague just because that's what they do. And they normally get a free pass from most of the media. But now you can't deny what's happening here. We get people falling from C-17s because it's better to try to hold on to the landing gear of a jet going 150 miles an hour than live under Taliban rule. Nothing left. And KT made a great point, too. I'd be really nervous if I was Taiwan right now because China's going to make some moves, and China doesn't mess around. When China fights, China kills. And, you know, Taiwan is going to be – they're going to need to rely on the Australians and probably the Japanese to help them because, I mean, would you want to be a source for the United States right now? Would you want to stand up for the United States when all they're going to do is inevitably just back out and leave you to die? And not just die really, really bad.
KT McFarland, Rob O'Neill, thank you both for your service to our country. It's good to have you on.